What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you and say this is the third time I've tried to film this, and I don't think I'm awake just yet. There are also others in my house that are still sleeping, so if I do seem a little bit more quiet, that is why. So, a new Star Wars show. I think it goes without saying at this point that I'm a die-hard Star Wars fan. If you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you probably already know that. I'm wearing a Star Wars hoodie right now. I've got the Mandalorian hat on right now, and yeah, overall, this is a universe and just movies and TV shows and characters that I just never get tired of. So, at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, when we had that post-credit scene that showed Boba Fett taking out Bib Fortuna, played by Matt Wood, reprising his role as Bib Fortuna when he was recasted to play the character for a quick moment in The Phantom Menace, we get to see Boba Fett take out Bib Fortuna and take over as the new daimyo of this section of Tatooine. And yeah, it's great to see how that power struggle has kind of been dealt with over the course of the show. And leading into the show, I was just excited to see Boba Fett, to be able to see Temuera Morrison return as Boba Fett while also having Ming-Na Wen return as Fennec Shand. I thought was great, especially since between The Mandalorian and this, we got the Bad Batch that included characters like Fennec Shand in the mix that definitely allowed us to expand upon her character, with Ming-Na Wen playing the character in that animated show as well. So here we are now with the Book of Boba Fett. Like I said, he's just taken out Bib Fortuna, and he's essentially the new Jabba. He wants to kind of rule with respect and not necessarily go with the approach of fear that the previous leaders had done. So over the course of this show, we're learning about how Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc pit, which is not a new concept for anybody who's been a long-time Star Wars fan. It goes back to, I believe, the 90s, when there was originally the book that explains how he escaped the Sarlacc pit, and we had Dengar involved with all that. So they definitely go with a different approach here. But yeah, we get to see all of that. We get to see him have this family kind of connection with Tusken Raiders as he kind of learns to become a different person altogether, which ultimately leads to him, you know, wanting to lead with respect when it comes to being this leader, to being this daimyo. So overall, I really thoroughly enjoyed this show from beginning to end, though I do have some criticisms, and I will say that there's elements about this show that I think really held it back from being absolutely great. But as a longtime Star Wars fan, there were so many great moments that put a smile on my face, so many little Easter eggs, references, and hints and nods to things that longtime Star Wars fans like myself were able to pick out. And at the end of the day, I think the show wrapped everything up really nicely, giving me a big smile by the end of it and feeling satisfied as a Star Wars fan. Now, it's hard to talk about this show in the specifics without getting into spoilers, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give my quick thoughts on the show in and of itself, and then I'm going to move on to spoilers to talk about a couple specifics that I'm sure people want to talk about. And as they do with all these Disney Plus shows, over the course of weeks, they start dropping character posters and different elements that, you know, do essentially spoil what happened in the last week's episode. So it's tough to completely stay away from spoilers here when a lot of marketing for this has now shown a lot of these spoiler reveals and spoiler characters that have appeared over the course of the last few episodes in particular. So I'm not going to hold back entirely. There's already been officially released posters that have characters on them and stuff, so I'm just going to go ahead and get into all that in just a little bit. But for now, what I will say is overall, I really enjoyed this show. I found it to be a good time. There were moments where I found it to be a little bit disjointed. There are 2 episodes in particular where it is kind of distracted from Boba Fett. That's what I'll say to avoid spoilers, and I love those episodes. They're some of the strongest in the entire season. However, I do think it took away from the overall narrative, specifically honed in around Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. I think they do a good job of building up the story with the first 4 episodes leading up to the 5th and 6th episode that do kind of have that distraction from him. But overall, I did enjoy the build up. I just felt like there were certain elements that felt a little bit rushed or a little bit just breezed over. There are also a group of side characters over the course of this show known as the mods that are kind of irrelevant. They're just kind of there to be bodies that are kind of present. It feels like they'll probably end up being a bigger part of season 2 based on how the way that this show ended up ending. But in and of itself, I think without a doubt my least favorite part of the show was the mods. And you know, for a lot of people it had to do with the color of their speeders or things like that, but for me it just felt more of just how the characters looked. They didn't really fit that Tatooine aesthetic, and I'm all for characters that kind of have a in Star Wars universe version of tattoos or piercings, in this case modifications, which are just essentially, robotic enhancements put on them. I like the concept, but I think had these characters appeared more on Coruscant or something like that, it probably would have fit a little bit more in the show. It would have just felt a little bit more like Star Wars, whereas they felt a little bit just too bright, a little bit too different on Tatooine, and at times I wasn't 100% sold on just their look. But beyond that, I just feel like their characters were really not given much. So by the time we got to the end of the show, I was like, I feel like the show wants me to think these characters are more important than they actually are. And without a doubt, that's probably my biggest disappointment in this show, is a mixed bag of characters that were introduced for short periods of time that don't really get much development and don't really have much to do in the story itself, which ultimately leads me to think, why are they in this show? Outside of that, though, I really did enjoy the show. I thought Temuera Morrison returning as Boba Fett was amazing in The Mandalorian, and to see him in this show was awesome. I think he really embodies the character super well, and I really enjoy the approach he had to playing the character, while also pulling in parts of his own real-life culture into the way that he fights and does things as this character. Over the course of the show, I really enjoyed the build-up of the relationship between Fennec Shand and Boba Fett as well. I like that the show does a good job of utilizing current times as well as flashbacks to really expand upon its characters, and ultimately that part of the show I thought was really solid. And by the time the show was over, I had a smile on my face. There are so many satisfying moments over the course of the season. I think sometimes the season can feel a little disjointed because of some of the choices they kind of wanted to make in terms of jumping around and focusing on other characters. It's going to put a smile on a lot of people's faces, but as a show in and of itself, that with a contained narrative, even if it does have connective tissue to other things, I do think at a certain point it just feels disjointed and doesn't always feel fully like a Boba Fett show. But by the time the show is over, there is a very satisfying ending with a nice bow on top that also leaves things incredibly open for all of the characters that we see present across the entirety of the show. Now, it's hard to talk about anything else about the show without getting into spoilers, so this is your spoiler warning. Let's get into it. Black Chrysanthemum is in this show. When I saw that Black Chrysanthemum appeared on screen, I was losing my mind. And the reason for that is because he is from the comic books, most recently the Vader comics, but he's also appeared in other comic books. He's worked alongside Boba Fett before and has even gotten into a scuffle with Obi-Wan Kenobi, who left him a scar, and you can actually see that here in the show. So to see Black Chrysanthemum appear in live action was a dream come true. I've been keeping up with the comics and the books and all that jazz. As soon as I saw him appear on screen, I had a smile on my face, and it was just amazing to see him over the course of this show. On top of that, you also have Luke Skywalker in this show. And, this is without a doubt the biggest spoiler. But yeah, it is insane to see the technology used to bring Luke Skywalker back. And based on some of the stuff I've been reading, it's all been technology based. Of course, there's a new actor that comes in to play the body for Luke Skywalker. But since The Mandalorian Season 2 aired, where we kind of had a very noticeably CG face for Luke, they did end up hiring somebody off of YouTube who was really good at doing deep fakes. I remember seeing an article on that and how a person had gone in and done a rework of that same scene from The Mandalorian, making it look far more impressive than what they actually did at Lucasfilm. So they ended up hiring that guy, and you can definitely tell that he was part of what made Luke's appearance in this show so amazing. It is absolutely flawless, and I have to say it's probably one of the greatest technological advancements I've seen in movies and TVs to this day. I was completely sold that was Mark Hamill. Of course, there's little moments where you can see that it is deep fake, that it is CG to some extent, but man, what an impressive deep fake, what an impressive piece of technology right here. You 110% over the course of the episode believe that is Luke Skywalker as we knew him from Return of the Jedi. So to see him with Ahsoka, to see him building his temple, even though we know where that's going to go, overall I thought was a great time. I also was reading something that Matthew Wood came out and said, Matthew Wood being most known for playing General Grievous, as well as Bib Fortuna, who died obviously not too long ago, and he's also really well known for playing the droids in the Star Wars universe, as well as doing a lot of the sound and sound editing for Lucasfilm. And he pretty much said that Mark Hamill didn't come in to do any new lines for the Book of Boba Fett. They actually used a neural network, if I'm not mistaken, that they can feed information into, and they were essentially able to use all of the archival footage that they have of Mark Hamill to make this character say lines of dialogue that would sound exactly like Mark Hamill. That is insane. That is crazy, and I cannot believe that we're in a time where they can do stuff like this. And I'm sure Mark Hamill is just having a great time being able to see himself as a young Luke Skywalker once again, and it is incredibly convincing. And that episode alone was just crazy. I mean, there was so much going on in that episode. There were so many little Easter eggs and references and nods, and just being able to see Grogu again, being able to see again that Ahsoka's just chilling there with Luke. I wish that we would have been able to see them meet, but it was just great to know that they're just kind of hanging out, that they see each other from time to time. Again, Luke building his temple again, even though we know where that's going to go. It was great to see. It was great to see him training Grogu, and that moment where essentially he gives Grogu an ultimatum of, here, take the Mandalorian armor and go with the Mandalorian, go back to Din, and you can go and live the life you want to, or take this lightsaber, Yoda's lightsaber, and if you take it, you can become a great Jedi with me. Now, of course, the episode had just came out. Grogu chose to be a Mandalorian, and I think we all knew that that was going to be the case. Did we really think that they were going to go a long time without him being part of the story? I kind of wish they would have gone a little bit longer. I wish he would have gotten further into his Jedi training. I almost wish that he had to become a Jedi and then maybe kind of turn back to wanting to be a Mandalorian. But I am happy with what they ended up doing. It's great to see the two of them back together. Now, I jumped straight to the 6th episode to talk about Luke and all that because I just had to, but let's go back a little bit to the 5th episode that was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, and I thought she did an incredible job with this episode. I think the direction overall with the series has been phenomenal. It's been great to see Jon Favreau back as part of the creative team, Dave Filoni, Robert Rodriguez. I mean, everybody who was a part of making this show what it is, incredible. And that 5th episode was amazing. It was The Mandalorian, and I started to see memes come out after the 5th and 6th episode, essentially saying that Boba Fett may make a cameo in the next episode of the Book of Boba Fett, because he was essentially non-existent in those 2 episodes, and that was kind of what I was talking about earlier. But I loved them, and I jumped to that 6th episode. Obviously, there's so much amazingness there when it comes to Luke Skywalker and all that stuff. But the 5th episode was just a great episode of The Mandalorian, essentially the season premiere of The Mandalorian season 3, and it was just great to see Din Djarin again. It was great to see these characters again, though I do feel like it took away from the Book of Boba Fett, and ultimately I was more invested in that story than I was what was happening with Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, which I feel was kind of them shooting themselves in the foot by trying to bring everything together. But yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed that 5th episode, being able to see, Mando trying to figure things out with the Darksaber and them having connective tissue to Star Wars Rebels. There was just so much in the dialogue and the characters appearing and the places we were going that was just so amazing. He also gets his new ship that's an N1 starfighter, and overall that 5th episode was a love letter to not only the prequels but the Phantom Menace in particular. We also see a BD droid that first appeared in Jedi Fallen Order for the first time in live action. We get to see again that he got an N1 starfighter as his new ship, taking us right back to the prequels, which was phenomenal, being able to see that right out of the Phantom Menace, and he test drove it in the exact same places that we get to see the pod race take place in episode 1. I love those little Easter eggs. I love those hints and nods to the fans, and there was just so much of that over the course of the whole show. We also get to go to Tashi Station in one of the episodes, and we get to see 2 characters that were friends of Luke's from an old deleted scene, and if you've never seen that before from A New Hope, I highly recommend checking it out. I don't think that's a reference that everybody's going to catch, but if you're a long-time Star Wars fan like myself and you're pretty familiar with the deleted scenes, yeah, it was very noticeable that we were in Tashi Station, and those 2 friends of Luke were right there, which was pretty cool. And then the last thing I want to touch on is Cad Bane. Being able to see Cad Bane in live action is incredible. And this is just another example of how if you are not keeping up with the animated stuff because you're one of those Star Wars fans who feels like that doesn't count, or that's not as important, or that's just kind of there, or that, that's not stuff you have to watch. They have been continually showing, even if you go back to Solo, a Star Wars story with Darth Maul's appearance there, and then of course with all the live action shows and the animated shows, they've been continually showing that it all counts. It's all in the same universe, and these characters from the animated stuff are starting to make appearances in live action played by the same actors or the same voice actors. And I think a lot of, casual Star Wars fans are going to start to fall behind and feel a little bit confused as to who these people are and why people are getting so excited. So to see Cad Bane, one of the most notorious and most famous bounty hunters of all time, appear in this show was a great time. The voice was great. To be able to hear that same voice coming back and just see him in live action, it was awesome. I have seen some criticisms on how he looks compared to how he looks in the animation, but I always expect that any character that's coming from animation to live action and vice versa is always going to look different than you know them to look, at least to some extent. Plus, this is a much older version of Cad Bane than we've ever seen before, so there is also that. The one thing I was looking forward to, and I expected to happen in this show, was a showdown between Boba Fett and Cad Bane. For anybody who's not familiar with Cad Bane, he's a huge bounty hunter character that appears over the course of the Clone Wars, and he also has an appearance in Star Wars The Bad Batch. But something that a lot of Star Wars fans may know is that there's a deleted scene, deleted episode, unfinished episode from the Clone Wars where we would have finally seen Boba Fett in his official Boba Fett armor going toe-to-toe with Cad Bane, where he would have shot him in the head and killed him. Now that episode ended up never getting made, but it was something that Star Wars fans knew of. When Cad Bane reappeared in the Bad Batch though, he had a metal plate over his head, which can be seen in the show, that kind of indicated to a lot of fans that maybe those events actually did happen and that Boba did actually shoot Cad Bane, but he was fine. So here we are now with this show finally giving us that payoff to this build-up over the course of time and having Cad Bane actually be killed by Boba Fett. However, I will say, if you are not a fan of the Clone Wars or any of the other stuff, Bad Batch, you don't know who Cad Bane is, he may just appear as another bounty hunter who shows up and ends up getting taken out in the next episode, which I will say was a little disappointing because he is a big Star Wars fan favorite. But at this point, I feel like I kind of expected it to happen, so I'm probably not as disappointed as some others may end up being. So I haven't actually looked at anybody else's reactions before actually filming this. I just watched the last episode and just kind of wanted to talk about the series overall. Without a doubt, I've had a lot of fun with this show. I think that the Book of Boba Fett has been another great installment into Star Wars, and I'm just really excited to see where they continue this as we move into Mandalorian Season 3. So yeah, that's going to be my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett. How did you guys feel about this show? If you're a lifelong Star Wars fan like myself and you know all those different things that you were able to catch on to and different characters that were appearing, how did you feel over the course of the show? How do you guys feel about the mods? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Overall, I do have some criticisms. Not every episode, not every moment was amazing, but I had a lot of fun watching it. I was smiling throughout. There were so many great fan service moments that I felt were really earned, and ultimately, I just had a good time, and I think that's all you can really ask for when it comes to Star Wars. So a big thanks to you guys for watching. I can't wait to hear what you guys have been thinking about the show up to this point. What was your favorite moment? What was your favorite episode? What was your favorite character? Whatever the case may be, please leave any and all of those down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. So I'm editing this video right now, and I just wanted to throw this in here really quickly. So if you stuck around to this very end part, I do want to mention that post-credit scene where we see Cobb Vanth being modified by one of the mods. So I am curious to see where that goes. I was pretty sure that he wasn't going to die. I also forgot to mention that I really enjoyed the fact that they brought Cobb Vanth back. Timothy Olyphant is great in the role, and I really thoroughly enjoy also that they finally called, Mos Pelgo Freetown, as it is known in the Aftermath trilogy. For those who don't know, Cobb Vanth is from the books, so it was great to see him come back into the live-action format, and for them to be a little bit more in line with what we know from the books. So I just wanted to add this in really quickly, and also say that the music for this show was brilliant.